Hi guys, it's Kelly here, and I am back with another video. This is the edited replay of a live that I did for Honeybee Stamps. And so we are going to be creating our own landscape, but not just like willy-nilly watercoloring a landscape. We're going to use a stencil as our guide. And so I chose the range stencil because I haven't really worked with it too much. And I think that it makes a really beautiful landscape for a lot of different things. So I am working with a grip mat, and then I am also using Pixie spray, and this is basically just a light tack repositionable adhesive that you spray on the back of your stencils to help hold it in place. Now you might be asking, Kelly, why do you need the Pixie spray if you're using a grip mat? And it's because some of the sections in the middle are very thin, and there's nothing going to hold them in place because the grip mat only holds the outside edges. So that repositionable adhesive in the middle will get us to where we can kind of hold it. Now, if you don't have Pixie spray, I used for years Tombow Mono Multi Glue, and this is a repositionable once it dries. So you could put this on the back of your stencils. I did this for a really long time until they came out with an alternative. You can put this on the back of your stencils, kind of smear it out to the edge, wait for it to dry completely. You don't want it to be white at all, because when it's white, it's permanent. And then you would apply it to your stencil. If you're using the Tombow Mono Multi Glue, I do recommend that you kind of tap it on your hand a couple of times to reduce the stickiness, because it can be really, really sticky to begin with. Then you could see these ones don't have a key or a square or any of that to line it up because they have clear, how do I want to describe it? It's etched. That's the word. I kept thinking embossed, but their stencils are etched so that you can line them up really easily. But I also give myself a little guideline down at the bottom with like an alcohol marker, just so that I can very quickly line up the bottom of my stencil. And then you can see I'm going through here and I'm using all the same color. Why would I be doing that? And this confused a lot of people in the live as well. Because I've never worked with this stencil before, going in and laying it down all as one color is going to just save me time on switching back and forth between the colors, but it's going to give me a map of what each layer does. And then knowing what each layer does, I will better be able to make a game plan for the colors that I want to use in my actual card. Now, this is not for no reason, because you can see the colors are buildable, and even though we're using the same blue over and over again, we are still getting the image. And then you could actually use this to make a different card. Like, I think I even put in there, like I had a little here, this is the Art Deco. Like, you could do that in there, maybe do like a With Sympathy kind of set, and then use that blue background, for an actual card, just a more subtle one. Here, I forgot the fence posts. I had to go back in and get them. So now that I know what that looks like, I can get out this is watercolor cardstock. I'm using Canson Monteval watercolor cardstock. I have my kind of map out here to the left, and then I'm able to go through, look at kind of each one, and pick out my colors. I am using Distress inks. You can pretty much use any dye inks that you have, and they will work with this technique because they're water-based. So here, I laid down the stencil, but I didn't want the sky to be cut off. So I actually laid down the bottom first and then popped kind of the top of my card up on top of that stencil frame so that the whole top of it would just be blue. And I'm using the same blue that I used before, for my sky being very light-handed. And we're going to go in and we're going to do all of our stenciling. So for some of them, these little thin lines in between, I used that pixie tape, but just as a little bit of added assurance, I do like to lay my hand on those little stripy pieces. And so that way I know that they are secure and they're not moving, and I'm still going to get really nice thin stripes. And so I just picked out a couple of different greens for the grasses. You could do this all as a snow scene and not mess with the grasses at all. But I liked that it brought in different colors and different elements. So I think I ended up going with Rustic Wilderness, Peeled Paint, Mowed Lawn, pine needles, I think is the Ford that I ended up going with. Here, I need to do a little bit of masking just because I want the base of the mountains to be one color. And then there's another layer that's more in the field, and I didn't want to risk getting my purple where I didn't want it. So I'm doing Dusty Concord down at the bottom. Don't be afraid to kind of mix your colors. We are going to continue to add color and depth and dimension with our watercolor, but it's fine to kind of mix them from the start if you know that you want one area to be darker or lighter. So put the shaded lilac on top, then I'm going to flip that tape so that I can do the green portion in the field. This is where that pine needles comes in. And then I can just go ahead and remove that, and it keeps them separate. And that, what is that? That's pixie tape. We have pixie spray. That's pixie tape. And then for the other ones here, I kind of did a mix of colors. So I was kind of like running out of different green combinations for all of the different sections. And so I decided I was going to do the peeled paint, and then I was going to put on a little bit of, I think it's Rustic Wilderness, and I'm kind of, adding that right over top. The peeled paint is a little bit more yellow-green. The Rustic Wilderness is a little bit of a darker yellow-green. And then for here, because this piece, I guess, typically would be what you would do white, when you were doing your stenciling. So the clouds and the like snow on the mountains is on the same stencil. And so I don't want there to be purple in my clouds. So I'm going to mask them off and then do the Dusty Concord over top of the mountains. This is just going to give me more dimension. And then I'm also going to do my brown down here at the bottom for my fence line. And then I'm going to have to flip-flop my tape so that I can do the white, but I have to clean off the stencil in between. Otherwise, when I go to do the white of the clouds, I'm going to pick up the purple that's left over on the stencil, and that's not going to look great. We don't want that. So I'm going to go in, and I'm using the Brilliant White pigment ink. No, I'm using speckled ink. I'm sorry. I'm using speckled ink. And that's just to mark where the clouds are, because I'm going to go back in with the white. If you wanted to do them white, you could just go straight in with the pigment ink. And then for this one down here, I'm bringing back that pine needles. And then I also need to do the fence posts, which I'll do with that same brown. This time I remembered them. And then that is the stenciled piece. You can see one in color, one in monochromatic. They're both really pretty, but here's how we're going to kind of step it up a notch and get a little bit more out of our stencils. And I don't want you to feel like the stencils aren't enough on their own. They are. They're very pretty. This is just to stretch our supplies and get a different look. So I'm using a combination of a number 4 and a number 2 brush. When we are dipping our paintbrush into the water, we want to make sure that we are blotting off the base of the bristles so that there's still moisture in the tip, but it's really well controlled because we don't have all of that like bubbled moisture throughout all of the brushes. Now I am showing you here, picking up water, blotting it at the bristle or blotting it at the base, leaving those bristles moist, and then going in and moving that pigment. Once I'm moving that pigment with clean water, if I want to add more saturation or more depth, then I just smush the color. You don't have to do the same color, but I did. I tried to keep it simple, onto a non-porous surface. So I'm using my glass mat, but you can use a craft mat or whatever you have. And then I'm picking up a little bit of that color and then depositing it in. We use such a little amount of water because the more water, the less control. The less water, the more control. And since we already have this whole scene out painted for us, we're not trying to like blow out all the lines. We're just trying to go in and make it look painterly. That's the whole purpose. So here, like I'm going in and doing this green area on top of the fence posts. And you also don't want to work in 2 areas that are next to each other because that will also like merge them and everything will become really blobby. So once I have that done, then I'm going to skip the middle area between the fence posts, and I'm going to do the next one down so that these are parallel to each other, but they're not touching. And then that'll allow me to move the ink around that's on the paper. And then if I need to add any more shading, I can pick it up from my little palette, I guess, that we've created on the non-porous surface. Now, Honeybee, I picked this one, the range stencil, but Honeybee has lots of different ones. They have like a tropical scene. They have like just the one that I'm thinking of is the palm trees, and I did that one with markers. So if for some reason like watercolor is really not your thing, you can also add to it with markers instead of watercolor. So whichever one I guess you're more comfortable with. I really like these. Here, I'm trying to show you like what it looks like when it's bubbled up, and then how it looks when we like blot off the bristles. Oh, look, I dropped it on accident. So there's so much water in there, and that water is just not going to give us very much control. Now I've switched to the bigger brush because I'm working in a bigger area. So sometimes you don't want... Well, you still don't want a ton of water. You do want a bigger brush to hold more water so that if you're working in a larger area, you don't have to keep going back, and because doing this with like a number 2 would be challenging. And then obviously the more comfortable you get with larger brushes, then the closer you'll get to being able to do your own watercolor with no guides. But as a card maker, this is sufficient for me. I'm very happy to do this and to create the different scenes using the stencils as my base, because by the time I'm done with it, it doesn't look like a stenciled scene. It looks like something that is hand painted. And that's good enough for me. So yeah, this live was a fun one. I just want to mention, just in case if you haven't seen those, I am still doing the Honeybee lives, but now I'm only doing them on Honeybee's channel, because there was a lot of confusion with the chat. So when you come on my channel, you could only see people chatting who were on my channel. Or if you were on the Honeybee channel, then you could only see people chatting who were on Honeybee's channel. So sometimes I would respond to a comment and people would be like, I don't see what comment you're responding to. And so it was just easier after having conversation with you guys to have everybody on the same channel. So I've just stopped streaming to mine. I will still share the edited replays here. So if you're not someone who's into the lives, then you don't even have to be worried about it. But if you are someone who was like, I really like the lives, why am I not seeing them anymore? You do need to subscribe over on the Honeybee channel, or check there when on Wednesdays at 1. So I really like the way that things are coming along. Definitely starting to have more of like a hand painted feel. Trying to make sure that I am working in areas that are not touching each other so that everything stays really nice and separate from one another. And then, watercolor does dry back lighter. So I'm making sure to add in as much pigment as I think it will need. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go back in and do 2 layers or 3 layers, or you absolutely can. I'm just not patient enough for that. Then that's not anybody's fault but my own. So here with this one, I am like following along with the stencil, but then I'm also going to do, you'll see later, I'm going to do little flicks of color, to help kind of fill that out a little bit more and look more like grasses. So I'm switching back to that. This might even be a number 1. Is it a number 2? This might even be a number 1, because those fence lines are pretty thin. And then I'm just adding water to them. And then again, just like we talked about before, picking up anything, that extra pigment to make any areas darker, to help them stand out a little bit more. And then, I was really happy with the way that the fence turned out, shockingly so, because I was a little bit nervous that they would be like all like cattywampus. And my lines are not necessarily perfectly straight, but I think it gives it maybe like a little bit of a charming look. I don't know. You can let me know what you think in the comments, but it doesn't bother me at all. So back to the number 4 for this larger expansive area. So here I did this, green so that it looks like the field continues on, but you absolutely could switch this up and make it like a pathway. You could do the ink blending like brown, maybe add some little rocks and things. You could put in there was a Lovely Layers horse that came out at the same time. You could put in the little horse right there. So he was kind of like walking on a little pathway. A lot of things that you can do with it. I really like the softness that it has as kind of like a painted watercolor piece. And I think it just gives it a different look than just, ink blending and then leaving it just that way. So then there is pretty much all of the greenery, I think, and then we're going to work on moving into the mountains. So I'm going to paint around with clean water, those darker areas, just like we've been doing. We'll put down clean water and then add in our pigment. So I'm working around those darker areas. Sometimes that can get a little challenging depending upon how many areas you have to paint around or how small they are. Just do your best, because keeping those stenciled areas is what helps to keep the definition and the dimension, versus if you just painted over the whole thing, then the darker purple would blend into the lighter purple, and then you'd have like a big blob mountain, instead of having defined mountain ranges. So then once I have that in, I am going to add the, what is this? Dusty Concord? Yeah, it's Dusty Concord. So that's the one that I originally did the blending with. So I am putting that down, and then I decided that I wanted it to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to go back in with that Villainous Potion. Now you do want to make sure that, again, like we're working while areas are still wet, to get them to blend out. If it looks like you've lost a little bit of your moisture, you want to re-wet it with clean water before you bring in the pigment. Then here I'm using that same kind of darker color to really add in some depth and dimension into those pieces that are, I don't even know, they're stenciled there, but they're supposed to be the snow, but I'm changing them. So now I don't even know what to call them. Little alcoves? I'm not 100% sure. So, I'm going to put those in, add a little shading to them, and then in between the mountains, I'm going to go in and add like just a little triangle of color. I am still following the shape of the mountain, because the shading's kind of like from the top left to the bottom right. So I'm following that same shape. That little triangle follows that same shape, but this is just to give them a little bit of dimension. So did you see my little quick flip trip catch thing? Yeah, I dropped my paintbrush. But anyway, so that's going to give them a little bit of separation in between the two of them, and then I will be able to go back in and continue working with those darker areas. So I don't know about you guys, but I am so over the cold and the snow. So if you're unfamiliar, I live in Northeast Ohio. Today, right now, it is a balmy 11 degrees. When I took my little jelly bean to daycare this morning, it was -7. I was pretty shocked that the kids still had school, because he's had off all week. And it was warmer than it was today. But anyway, I don't know. They must be running out of calamity days. That could be it. Absolutely. So yeah, I was really surprised. But like even yesterday, so I remember like at some point when I was younger, people being like, oh, well, it's too cold to snow. Like at some point it's too cold to snow. Well, I would like to know what that point is, because it just snowed again yesterday. Like what point is it too cold to snow? Or is that just a myth? Is that like Medusa and Zeus? Like, tell me, I need to know. Because at some point I want it to be too cold to snow. Okay, so now how are we going to put our white in? We're going to work with gouache. I don't have a lot of experience with gouache. I really just kind of work with white. If you're interested in that, I know Dawn Woolslagel has some videos over on her channel that show using gouache. But basically, it's like a more opaque watercolor. And so I have the one from Liquitex, which is the acrylic gouache, and then I also have one from Altenew. I'm using the one from Altenew, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of water to make it so it's a little bit more movable. It's also going to make it a little bit more transparent. So the thinner it is, the more transparent it is, the thicker it is, the more opaque. And so I'm going to use like a combination of the thinner and the thicker versions to put in our clouds. That's why we use the speckled egg to kind of mark where our clouds are. That way we can paint them in and not lose them. Here I was doing a little experiment because somebody asked me, like, if you put the gouache down first, would it resist it? And so I was like, I don't know, let's do an experiment. Because really, I mean, when you are watching these videos, you know, and we're teaching you things, a lot of it is just from our own experience and our own experiments. So in addition to the clouds, I'm also going to use this to put my own snow into the mountain range. I think that I would love to do this again as a night scene, because I think that snow on top of the mountain would really like pop off, you know, being right up against that dark sky. With the lighter blue, it kind of gets a little bit lost, especially on the video. It's much easier to see in person. But definitely in the video, it can be a bit more challenging to be able to see that. But I'm just pretty much going in and painting in my own snow. Again, I'm paying attention to the direction of the mountain range, and adding snow kind of where it peaks. And then sometimes I'm adding a little bit like on top of those darker areas, and that contrast is going to provide more dimension as well. But this just really kind of brings the whole thing together. And I am here for it. Because you guys know I like to make cards that you know, I can kind of make them my own and do different techniques where the card looks like my card and not like everybody else's card. So anyway, I was really surprised because it's been so cold that they had school. But tonight, my oldest one has his social for school. Here's where I'm going in and using a little bit of that green to like kind of add in some grasses and some texture. And that's because this is so close, like per the scale, it's so close to us. You would be able to see like some blades of grass. And so I'm just kind of adding those in, just kind of like flicking up the paint from the grassy area. So anyway, he has his dance tonight, his social, and I am volunteering. I don't know if you guys remember the 6th grade one he had. I also volunteered. And so I'm volunteering for this one again. But I thought, like, I didn't even know if we were going to be able to have it because, you know, it's just been so chilly. So here, if you do not have gouache and you're like, hey, I still want to add snow, a white gel pen is a great alternative. So I'm just going in any of the smaller areas where maybe it would have been a little bit challenging for me to paint, or any areas that I want to be kind of more opaque, you know, because maybe I was painting with the thinned out version of the gouache at the time. I told you in the beginning, I'm impatient. So sometimes that is just a better option. You could also add highlights to the fence posts or anything else that you would like to. I am going to add some highlights to my cloud areas as well, so that some of them, you know, are a little bit more solid white. But then really, like, this is like the majority of our card. Like, this is our card. So here's the colored version versus the ink blended version. I think it looks so fun. Here I'm just showing you, like, if you did a watercolored version, you could do like a gray version on the outside and have that like black, white pop of color situation. For the sentiment, I absolutely could stamp this and die cut it out. I don't think it's necessary. And so I am just going to stamp it. I know that's scary. I'm just going to stamp it directly on the paper. And so the one I chose to go with was Relax and Enjoy Your Retirement. Because actually today, I think it was today was his last day. One of the guys that my husband still works with and I worked with for years when he first, I was there before him. He got hired after me, and now he's retiring. So anyway, I made that for him, and I didn't think that I needed to like die cut it out. This was a lot of my one layer cards. I like to just put the sentiment right on top so it's like a true one layer. But this one I am going to mount it and add a little extra dimension because it is such a simple card. I felt like I needed a little bit of contrast. So I'm going to mat it on black, and then I'm going to put it on a white card base. So we'll have that little bit of black contrast around that'll also tie in the sentiment. And then I am going to put it on white to kind of bring everything together. And then I know this is going to be crazy. The only shimmer I added was just a clear shimmer pen. You do need to be careful because any moisture can reactivate your distress inks or your dye inks. So you do need to be careful, and you can see how I'm putting it down is in the same direction as the mountain, just in case. Just to have a little bit of shine there on our snow. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So I hope this inspires you to look at your landscape stencils a little bit differently and see how you can stretch those supplies to get a different look. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.